The sun peeked through the blinds, casting pale gold bars across the kitchen floor. Steam curled from my chipped mug as I stood by the window, staring at the empty driveway. My heart thudded with a restless, trembling energy I hadn't felt since our wedding day. Outside, the neighborhood lay quiet under a crisp morning sky. The oak trees lining the sidewalks rustling with the first warm breeze of July. I heard the faint roar of jet engines from the naval base down the road. My chest tightened. She was close. For 9 long months, my wife had been deployed aboard the USS Truman, floating somewhere beyond the horizon while I held down the fort here in our tidy little suburban cage. I took a slow sip of coffee, eyes flicking to the clock. 6:17 a.m. The HOA security patrol would be circling soon. I almost laughed at the thought. If only they knew who was coming home today. My mind flashed to the last video call we shared. Her face had been pixelated by satellite lag, but her smile still radiated warmth. First thing I do when I'm back, she had asked. Steak dinner, no rations, real food. And now she was minutes away, driving herself home in a borrowed Navy SUV. Probably exhausted, salty hair tied back neat, uniform pressed as always. She hated looking tired in public. I smiled at the memory of her lectures about presentation, about walking like you belonged in every room you entered. That was my wife, Commander Evelyn Brooks. The woman who'd led hundreds across oceans yet still called me to ask if we had eggs left in the fridge. I stepped onto the porch, feeling the wood creak beneath my slippers. The morning air smelled of cut grass and warming asphalt. A robin hopped across the yard. My stomach flipped when a dark Navy SUV rolled around the corner. It slowed in front of our house. The engine idled, vibrating low like a purring panther. The front door opened, and she stepped out. God, she looked so small from here, despite the power she carried. The summer sun glinted off her silver collar insignia. She pushed her sunglasses up into her hair and stretched, rolling her shoulders, trying to shake off the stiffness of hours spent driving. Then her eyes met mine across the yard. She smiled, tired but radiant. I didn't even realize I'd set my mug down on the porch railing. My feet were already moving down the steps, across the dew-wet grass. The smell of jet fuel still clung to her uniform as she wrapped her arms around me. The world blurred, my eyes burning. 9 months gone in a single heartbeat. Welcome home. Commander, I whispered into her hair. She pulled back just enough to kiss me, her lips warm and chapped from salty air. Good to be home, babe, she murmured. Let me grab my bags before I collapse. I chuckled as she opened the SUV's back door, lifting out a heavy black duffel and a battered garment bag. Her name tag and rank patches gleamed under the rising sun. A couple of neighbors peeked through blinds, watching silently. I didn't care. Let them stare at her with quiet envy. She deserved every last ounce of respect in this world. But then came the clack of sandals on concrete. Sharp. Impatient, fast. I didn't even have to turn around to know who it was. Her perfume hit my nose before her voice did a sugary floral that never quite masked the sourness beneath. Well, what do we have here? Karen's tone dripped with forced sweetness, blocking the street again. Some people are trying to get to work on time. My wife stood upright, her posture military perfect, and turned slowly. Karen stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed over her pastel pink cardigan, her hair done up in an overly teased bun. Her sunglasses perched low on her nose as she scrutinized the SUV, then my wife's uniform, then me. Her lips twisted with distaste. This is a public road under HOA jurisdiction, she snapped. You can't just park government vehicles here. We have standards to maintain. And you're blocking the mail truck's route. I stepped forward, trying to keep my voice calm. She just got back from deployment, Karen. Give us 10 minutes to move her bags inside, and we'll get it out of the way. Karen snorted. Deployment? That's not my concern. Rules are rules. If I let you break them today, everyone will. Think they can do it tomorrow? I'm calling the police. I felt my stomach drop. My wife's fingers tightened around the strap of her duffel, her jaw flexing, but her face remained composed. She nodded politely to Karen. Good morning, ma'am, she said in that steady, clipped tone she used on underperforming subordinates. It'll just be a few minutes. I appreciate your patience. Karen sneered, her gaze flicking up and down my wife's uniform like it was a tacky Halloween costume. Appreciate my patience. Honey, you clearly don't understand how things work around here. This is not a military base. This is a respectable neighborhood. We don't need camo trucks scaring children. The SUV wasn't even camouflaged. But arguing felt pointless. I could already see her dialing on her phone. Her nails, painted baby blue, clicked against the screen as she turned away, muttering about noise complaints and unauthorized military vehicles. My wife sighed softly and placed her bag down beside her boots. Her eyes drifted across the neat rows of manicured lawns, the silent houses with curtains twitching. She turned to me and gave a small, resigned smile. It's fine, she whispered. They're just doing their job. But there was something cold and calculating in her gaze. I recognized that look. It was the same look she gave before initiating a complex tactical maneuver. The same look she gave briefing her team before a high-stakes boarding operation in hostile waters. The look that meant she wasn't intimidated, she was assessing. And Karen, clueless as ever, kept ranting to her phone, her voice shrill and rising with each word. My wife quietly adjusted her collar, her posture even straighter now. The early sun glinted off her insignia like a warning flare. I felt a chill run through me despite the warmth of the morning. Karen thought she was about to win, but she didn't. Realized she had just challenged a woman who outranked every single cop she was calling. And as my wife tilted her chin up to watch the approaching patrol car rolling down the street, her lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Whatever Karen thought was about to happen, she was about to find out how wrong she was. The patrol car pulled up alongside the Navy SUV, tires crunching over loose gravel by the curb. Karen stepped forward immediately, waving frantically like she'd summoned the cavalry. Her grin was so wide I could see the fillings in her molars. Two officers emerged, one older with a thick mustache and mirrored sunglasses, the other younger, his badge gleaming in the morning sun. Hair slicked back with military precision that he hadn't earned. Karen gestured dramatically at the SUV. Then at my wife, her voice cutting through the quiet street like a rusty saw. Officers, thank goodness. This woman is blocking the road with some military vehicle. She says she just got back from deployment, but honestly, it looks suspicious. She's intimidating the neighborhood and refusing to move her truck. My wife didn't flinch. Her eyes tracked the officer's movements with calm precision. She stood with her boots planted shoulder-width apart, her back straight, her duffel bag at her feet like a deployed soldier's gear dropped before debrief. The older officer gave a polite nod, flipping open his ticket book with a sigh that said this was the last thing he wanted to deal with on a quiet Monday morning, ma'am. He said to my wife, this vehicle is blocking partial access to the mailbox cluster and street flow. HOA regulations require it be moved immediately. I'll need to see license, registration, and military ID, please. She slipped her ID out of her chest pocket in a single smooth motion. The younger officer watched her intently, his jaw twitching slightly as he read her rank. Karen leaned forward, squinting at the small card, her face contorting with confusion. The older cop frowned as he studied the ID and then glanced at the Navy plates on the SUV. Commander. The younger one blurted, unable to keep the disbelief out of his voice. My wife nodded once. Commander Evelyn Brooks, USS Truman. This vehicle is a Navy transport assigned for official return home from deployment under orders. Her voice was calm, clipped, and professional. She wasn't bragging, just stating facts as though briefing a junior officer who failed to read the mission docket. Karen scoffed and flipped, her hair over her shoulder with exaggerated disdain. Commander of what? This isn't a war zone. Sweetheart, this is Sycamore Ridge Estates. Your Navy rank doesn't matter here. You're just another resident. My wife's eyes flicked to me, then back to Karen. She said nothing, but the set of her shoulders hardened. The older officer cleared his throat. Ma'am, HOA rules apply, but federal protections are also in place. We'll need to verify current active orders to confirm exemption from local vehicle ordinances. Karen's nostrils flared. Federal protections, don't be ridiculous. This is our street. You need to enforce community rules, not bend over backwards for some military show-off. My wife tilted her head slightly, considering Karen like one might observe a hostile but insignificant insect. Then she turned to the officers, her tone cool but respectful. Officers, may I request your supervisor's contact? To me, I would prefer to clarify legal jurisdiction before this proceeds. The older cop blinked, caught off guard by her precision, shifted uncomfortably, and scratched under his chin. That shouldn't be necessary. We're just issuing a citation here. Moving the vehicle resolves the issue. The younger one shifted his weight from foot to foot, eyes darting between his partner and my wife. I could see the tension growing under his skin, as though he suddenly realized he might be out of his depth. Karen, oblivious, kept her smug smile locked firmly in place. I'm calling the HOA board to make sure you get the maximum fine. She snapped, already dialing on her phone again. Her fingers trembled with excitement. This is exactly why. I'm pushing for military parking bans in our next meeting. My chest burned with anger. My wife had spent months keeping carrier operations running flawlessly, mentoring new officers, making decisions that impacted national security, while Karen sat on a patio chair judging who left their trash bins out too long. But my wife remained. Still and silent, her eyes narrowed, thinking, calculating. The older officer spoke again, this time to me. Sir, can you move the vehicle into your garage temporarily while we sort this out? I opened my mouth, but my wife raised her hand. Slightly a gesture that stopped me in place. Her focus never left the two officers. Before we move anything, she said calmly, I would appreciate confirmation from your watch commander regarding federal preemption over HOA regulations when it concerns active duty military vehicles under transport orders. Please. The older officer hesitated, clearly weighing whether calling his supervisor was worth the hassle. Karen stomped her foot slightly, her voice rising in pitch. Why are you listening to her? She's the one breaking the rules. Just fine her. Tow the car if you have to. The younger cop cleared his throat and said softly to his partner, She's a Navy commander, sir. I think we should call. My wife shifted her gaze to him and gave a tiny nod of acknowledgement. The older officer let out a weary sigh and grabbed his radio mic. Dispatch Officer Reed requesting watch commander callback regarding vehicle. Code exemption for active duty Navy transport. Code identifier CDR Brooks. Over. Static buzzed. Then a woman's voice crackled through. Affirmative. Stand by. Karen's phone call connected. Yes. Hello, President Karen Lively from Sycamore Ridge HOA. I have a trespassing military vehicle here. And these officers are refusing to enforce parking violations. I need immediate. She fell silent as the radio crackled again. Officer. Reed, Watch Commander Stokes here. Confirm Commander Brooks is present. Affirmative, sir. Officer Reed replied. Commander Brooks is protected under Federal Statute 50, SC 3958, Service Members Civil Relief Act, exempting enforcement. of local parking restrictions on active-duty transport vehicles. No citation is authorized. Karen's mouth hung open. The younger cop exhaled slowly, relief flickering across his face. My wife nodded once, respectfully. "Thank you, Commander Stokes," she said clearly, toward the radio. "Welcome home, Commander. Thank you for your service." The watch commander's voice replied before signing off. The silence that followed felt heavy and absolute. Karen's breathing turned shallow. Her phone still pressed to her ear. She stammered to whoever was on the line. "No, never mind. Cancel. Everything's fine." Officer Reed cleared his throat. "Ma'am, you're free to unload your belongings. We apologize for any inconvenience." His eyes flicked to Karen, narrowing slightly before he turned away. My wife gave him a small smile. "No harm done, officer. Thank you for your professionalism." Karen's hands trembled as she lowered her phone, her cheeks blazing scarlet. Her eyes darted around the gathering crowd. Neighbors had stepped onto porches, pretending to check mail or water flower pots, but their phones were angled conspicuously, recording every second. Karen swallowed hard and forced a brittle smile. "Well," she said, her voice quivering with forced cheer, "I suppose. Welcome home, Commander." My wife bent to pick up her duffel bag, slinging it over her shoulder with a fluid, powerful motion. She looked down at Karen with the cold detachment of someone who'd faced down pirates, enemy destroyers, and hurricane-force winds without blinking. "Ma'am," she said calmly, "it's best to check federal statutes before making threats against active-duty military personnel. I'd hate to see you arrested for harassment or false reporting." Karen flinched as though slapped. My wife turned without another word, her boots crunching across the gravel as she walked up the driveway. I followed close behind, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The officers climbed back into their patrol car. As they drove off, the younger one gave my wife a small salute through the window. At the top of the porch steps, my wife paused. Her eyes were bright with exhaustion, and something fiercer beneath dignity, resolve, unbreakable calm. She looked at me and exhaled shakily. "I need a shower," she whispered. "Then steak. Lots of steak." I let out a strangled laugh and reached for her hand. Behind us, Karen stood frozen on the sidewalk, her shoulders hunched, lips pressed into a furious line. The neighbors watched silently, their respect and awe radiating from every doorstep. As we stepped inside, I felt the tension drain from my shoulders, replaced by a simmering anticipation. Karen thought today had ended. But she didn't realize my wife wasn't done with her yet. My wife emerged from the shower with steam curling around her like battlefield smoke, dissipating after victory. She wore simple navy sweatpants and a faded USS Truman t-shirt, her hair damp and brushed back. She looked softer out of uniform, but her eyes held the same glint of precise calculation. I set her coffee mug down on the kitchen counter just as she walked in. "Black, 2 sugars. Just like you like it," I said. She smiled tiredly and took a sip, eyes closed as the warmth spread through her. For a long moment, she just stood there in silence, absorbing the feeling of home. Then she set the mug down and glanced out the window toward Karen's house, where pink curtains twitched closed. A muscle feathered in her cheek. "You okay?" I asked quietly. She nodded, rolling her shoulders to loosen the tension still coiled beneath her skin. I expected a rude welcome back, but she's a special breed. That's putting it politely. She smirked faintly. She crossed a line today. Civilians have the right to be petty, but they don't have the right to interfere with active-duty operations. That truck was assigned under transport orders. She could have delayed a redeployment if it wasn't processed correctly. I watched her fingers drum against the ceramic mug, each tap precise, controlled. She was thinking, planning. I'd seen that rhythm before, late nights before carrier group exercises, before diplomatic negotiations, before boarding drills. Each tap was a silent measure of risk and strategy. "What are you planning?" I asked. She met my gaze calmly. "I'm not planning revenge, if that's what you mean. But ignorance this dangerous can't go uncorrected." My chest swelled with quiet pride. Even here, where her jurisdiction technically ended, she carried herself like a commander responsible for everyone under her watch, including clueless civilians who thought HOA bylaws outranked federal law. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number from memory. As it rang, she paced slowly through the kitchen, her bare feet silent against the tiles. "Lieutenant Harper," she said when the line picked up. "Yes, it's Brooks. I need a copy of the active transport exemption briefing slides. The ones we use for onboarding reserve officers returning to civilian neighborhoods." "Yes, send it to my email immediately. Thanks." She ended the call and set her phone down, exhaling as she leaned back against the counter. The morning sun spilled across her damp hair, turning it almost bronze in the light. "You're going to educate her?" I asked, in a manner of speaking. She replied, her eyes distant. We ate breakfast in relative silence. I made her eggs and buttered toast while she scrolled through her emails with military efficiency, deleting junk, archiving reports, reading and replying with brisk precision. It was like watching a storm rebuild itself after landfall, regaining structure, ready to roll forward again with unstoppable momentum by the time she finished eating. Her face had settled into its familiar mask of calm authority. She gathered her keys, wallet, and the printed briefing slides she'd just received, slipping them into a thin navy leather folder. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Command decisions are best executed in person," she said. "Stay here and enjoy your coffee." I watched her walk out to the driveway, back straight, hair pulled into a neat bun again. The SUV was still parked there, gleaming under the sun. As she stepped out onto the sidewalk, Karen's front door swung open. She was already waiting, like a spider feeling vibrations on its web. "Oh, back to cause more problems," Karen called out, crossing her arms with theatrical exaggeration. She wore a floral robe now, her hair still teased high, and her lips were curled into a self-satisfied sneer. My wife stopped in front of her and held up the navy folder. "Good morning, ma'am. I brought you something." Karen blinked at the folder, suspicious. "What is that?" "It's a brief prepared by the Department of the Navy explaining federal protections for active duty personnel returning from deployment," my wife said smoothly. "I've highlighted the sections relevant to HOA jurisdictions. I thought it might help you avoid similar legal missteps in the future." Karen snatched the folder from her hand, flipping it open. Her eyes darted over the first few lines. Her face flushed bright pink, then white, then back to pink as comprehension set in. "You think you can threaten me with this legal jargon?" she snapped, slamming the folder shut. "You military types think you're above the law. This is my neighborhood. I can propose rules as I see fit." "That's incorrect, ma'am," my wife said evenly. "Federal law supersedes local HOA regulations in these circumstances. Interference can be prosecuted. I am not here to threaten you, only to educate you before you create liabilities for yourself and your board." Karen's mouth opened and closed wordlessly. Her hand trembled around the folder. You can't do this. I'll call the board. We'll file a complaint with your command." My wife's lips twitched into the faintest smile. "Please do. My CO will direct it back to legal counsel, who will educate you the same way I am now, only with considerably less patience." Neighbors watched from nearby porches again. Phones were out, recording. I saw Mr. Lacey across the street tilt his camera sideways to catch the scene and landscape. Karen noticed too. Her eyes darted around, panic flashing behind the rage. "Why? Are you humiliating me like this?" she hissed, her voice shaking. "I'm not humiliating you," my wife said, her voice quiet but edged with steel. "I'm giving you an opportunity to educate yourself before your ignorance becomes actionable negligence." Karen's hands fell limply to her sides, folder hanging forgotten from her fingertips. For the first time, she looked small, her arrogance stripped away under the precision of military authority wielded with surgical finesse. My wife inclined her head slightly. "Have a good day, ma'am." She turned and walked back toward the house, each step measured and silent. As she passed me on the porch, she reached out and brushed her fingers against mine. Her touch was warm, grounding me back into reality after watching her dismantle Karen's entire sense of power in under 5 minutes. Inside, she set the folder copy on the kitchen table. "That should buy us a few weeks of peace," she said. Her voice sounded tired again, but lighter, relieved. "You didn't have to do that," I said. She shook her head. "I did. She's dangerous. People like her don't understand consequences until they see them laid out in black and white." She poured herself another cup of coffee, the clink of the spoon against the mug echoing softly in the kitchen. For a moment, she just stood there, breathing, eyes half closed, shoulders slumping with quiet exhaustion. Then she opened her eyes, and I saw the calm satisfaction within them. The war was over for now, but we both knew Karen wasn't finished. She would lick her wounds, re-strategize, and come back swinging with something else. My wife knew it too, but she was ready. She had faced down far greater enemies than one petty HOA tyrant. And she would not be intimidated by suburban politics. Outside, Guan remained frozen on her porch, clutching the folder to her chest as though it might burn her. Neighbors walked past in silent judgment. The breeze rustled the leaves overhead, carrying away the last echoes of her power. My wife took a long sip of her coffee, eyes distant as she watched the steam curl into the same. Silicode until meal lays, and leaves a rich, long-lasting color. And leaves a rich, long-lasting color. Neil lays, resize it surly silla, meal lay sillity. Meal lay sellises a love, me alive. Meal lay sellity sellas, sillity lay. I pays eyes carees it, my saled, we ed, my eyes, my psilis by me to canal I win, I un sid kai is up I it to me see kitikai saluts, with bithesus I cus it to go canupsa I beg with the did tack that be episode to ski cases this that morning light. Her fingers drummed lightly against the mug once, twice, 3 times, each beat a silent promise that the next move would be hers. That afternoon, the sun blazed high over Sycamore Ridge, baking the sidewalks into pale concrete ovens. The neighborhood felt tense, as if the confrontation from the morning still rippled through its pristine lawns and perfect hedges. I stood on the porch cleaning the grill, preparing to fulfill my promise of steak dinner. Inside, I heard my wife's quiet footsteps as she unpacked her duffel bag, sliding uniforms and folded PT gear into the drawers she hadn't touched for nearly a year. She emerged in jeans and a navy tank top, her hair pulled back in a low bun. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes remained sharp. As she stepped onto the porch, I noticed she carried her phone in her left hand, thumb hovering over the screen like a poised trigger. She scanned the street methodically, then turned to me with a faint, thoughtful smile. "I need to make a quick call before dinner," she said softly. "Anything urgent?" I asked. "Just tying up loose ends," she replied. She stepped into the shade near the rose bushes, dialed a number from memory, and waited. Her voice turned calm and professional the moment the line connected. "Commander Brooks here. Could you patch me through to Base Public Affairs?" "Yes, I'll hold." I pretended to focus on scrubbing the grill grates, but every cell in my body leaned toward her words. The breeze carried snippets of her conversation as she spoke with crisp authority. Yes, Lieutenant, thank you. I'd like to authorize release of community education materials regarding service members' rights under the Service Members Civil Relief Act. Correct. Civilian neighborhoods with frequent deployments. I don't want a generic mailing. I want a presentation session for HOA boards within a 20-mile radius. Good. I'll provide contact details. Let's make this happen within the week. She ended the call and stood silently, phone still in hand, her gaze fixed on the horizon as if watching something far beyond the neat rooftops of Sycamore Ridge. Finally, she turned back to me, her expression unreadable. She's going to learn, she said. Her voice wasn't angry. It carried something deeper, a quiet conviction, a sense of duty that ran marrow deep. You're bringing the entire Navy legal team to educate Karen's little empire. I asked with a low laugh. Not just her, she replied, walking over to the porch and leaning against the rail. Every HOA in this district, if one of them thinks they can override federal protection, the others will follow. Better they hear it from me before someone gets sued or arrested. I reached out and hooked my fingers with hers. Her grip tightened for a brief moment, silent warmth passing between us. Then she exhaled slowly, tension bleeding from her shoulders. As she watched a hummingbird dart among the roses, the smell of seared steak soon filled the yard. I plated dinner and we ate together on the porch, the sun dipping low behind the trees, staining the sky in copper and lavender. She ate quietly, savoring each bite, her eyes flicking around the neighborhood every now and then, with the calm vigilance of someone trained never to fully let down their guard. Halfway through dinner, Karen emerged from her house. She wore a crisp lilac blouse and beige slacks, her hair pinned back severely. She walked down her driveway with forced purpose, clutching the navy folder against her chest as though it might shield her from public scrutiny. Her eyes flicked toward us and immediately away again, her shoulders tense and hunched. She walked to her mailbox, opened it with trembling hands, pretended to shuffle through letters she didn't even pull out, then closed it and walked back. Inside, without a word, my wife watched her impassively. There was no smugness in her gaze, only a detached compassion that made Karen's humiliation all the more complete. For my wife, this wasn't about victory, it was about responsibility. About protecting her people, even here in the quiet civilian streets that saw only lawns and picket fences where she saw vulnerabilities and threats. As the last rays of sun faded and the crickets began their evening chorus, she stood and stretched, her silhouette dark against the pale orange sky. She gathered our plates, carried them inside, and began washing up with quiet efficiency. I followed her, watching her from the doorway as water ran over her fingers, soap bubbles catching the fading light like tiny rainbows. You know this isn't over, I said gently. She didn't look up, but her lips curved into a faint smile. It never is, she said. People like her never stop. They just wait, regroup, and find new ways to assert themselves. I stepped behind her and wrapped my arms around her waist, pressing my forehead against her shoulder. At least you're home to handle it. She turned in my arms, water dripping from her hands, and kissed me softly. That's why I'm here, she whispered. That night, as we settled into bed, I scrolled through local community posts out of idle curiosity. My thumb froze when I saw the new video uploaded by a neighbor. The thumbnail showed Karen standing with the police, screaming furiously while my wife stood calmly beside her SUV in full uniform, arms crossed, eyes shaded by sunglasses. The title read, HOA President Tries to Intimidate Navy Commander. Instant Karma. The comments section exploded with praise and memes. One showed a photoshopped image of Karen wearing a dunce cap under the caption, HOA equals hilariously outranked again. Another simply said, "Don't start wars you can't finish." I showed it to my wife. She shook her head, sighing softly. Internet always finds a way to exaggerate. "Still satisfying though," I said, grinning. She smiled faintly and turned off the lamp. Darkness fell across our room, broken only by the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through the curtains. As she lay beside me, her breathing slow and even, I listened to the night sounds outside, the rustle of leaves, the hum of distant traffic, the faint bark of a neighbor's dog. Karen's house remained dark and silent. For tonight, the battlefield was quiet, but I knew my wife. She would sleep with one ear open, always ready. Her world had taught her that conflicts never truly ended. They only paused until someone decided to escalate again, and if Karen did, if she gathered her board and drafted a new round of rules and threats, she would find herself facing not just a suburban homeowner, but a woman forged on steel decks beneath searing sun and raging storms. A woman who led sailors and aviators into the unknown with unwavering resolve. A woman who, in every sense, outranked her completely. As sleep finally pulled me under, I felt her hand find mine in the dark. Her grip was strong, steady, unbreakable. The grip of a commander who knew that even in the quietest neighborhoods, battles were always waiting to be fought, and victories always waiting to be claimed.